Serious. People who have been the target of murderers, assassins. How did you survive? And why did they target you? I've posted about this before. I was in a really bad, abusive relationship. He had many mental issues along with diabetes. This doesn't excuse any of it, as he was aware of what his body was doing and he never got help. But it's important to know it didn't exactly come out of the blue. One night, he seemed bored and started trying to stick his feet in my face. I pushed them away, disgusted, and he exploded. It was a whole lot of action. He started by trying to choke me. I freed myself by grabbing a cat brush, the kind with the sharp metal points, and pushing it into his chest. He let me go but pushed me to the ground and lifted his airsoft rifle and drove it to my head like he was trying to cave in my skull. At the last moment he hesitated. I ran out of the apartment and called the cops. It didn't occur to me until later when I was with a public defender documenting my injuries that he had really wanted to kill me. I had bruising so deep they were black in color. In places I don't even remember him hitting me. He really would have, if something in him hadn't hesitated. They missed. That's about the only reason. It was a random act of violence. A man ran up behind me, put a gun to my head and shot. He flinched, or I did, and he missed by an inch. Blew out my left eardrum and burned my hair behind my ear. He ran off immediately after. Cops said it was probably a gang initiation thing. I have deafening tinnitus now and horrible anxiety in public. I'm not sure if it counts, but a few years ago in high school, there was this guy that used to trouble everyone by taking naked photos of them when they were changing after pay class. I happened to be one of his targets, so I reported him to my teacher and eventually he got suspended for about a month and had to attend counseling sessions. One day I was at the bus stop waiting for my bus when suddenly I felt a push on my back and I fell onto the road. Luckily for me, the bus driver stopped the bus in time and I survived. However, I fell directly on my arm and it was fractured. Last I heard, he went to the juvenile center and no one ever had to see this devil again. No way to prove it, but had all the lug nuts on my truck's front passenger rim loosened, which caused death wobble so bad I almost crashed in the fast lane of the freeway. Luckily the rim stayed on. I had ghosted this one guy and part of me suspects he came and loosened my lug nuts in retaliation. My boss discovered it, being the nice guy he was. It's not my story, but the story of a family friend. He was a well-respected lawyer, and had a case against the mafia. The evidence was substantial, and he won the case. Multiple mafia members went to prison, and almost immediately after the case wrapped he started receiving threats. A few weeks later, despite police awareness, he was run off the road by another car. He survived, but with massive trauma, lost years of memory. He and his family moved states, and he is no longer able to work. It's a survival story, but not a win. It wasn't a murderer, but I was on a hit list of a student at my school a few months back. I was put there because I was a good friend of everyone else on the list. The police came to my house and asked me questions about them. Overall it's up. Edit clear things up. The reason he had a hit list in the first place was not because of bullying, it was his parents and he needing to take out his anger on others. Also the people on the list were his other friends. He had several mental illnesses that could have made it worse. My dad's cousin in high school used to sell drugs. Started small and then starting growing to selling in different towns. A gang wasn't too pleased that he was selling on their turf, so they put a hit on his head. The cops got wind of it before they killed him and picked him up from school. He ended up moving and I'm pretty sure he's in jail now. My ex-boyfriend hired some guy from Chicago to murder me after I broke up with him for selling drugs to my younger sister. Fortunately, my ex and I both had a mutual friend who found out and had more pull with the attempted assassin. Both were Polish immigrants. Ex calls me up later and demands $2,000 from me because he didn't get what he paid for, as the hired gun wouldn't give a refund. My brother liked to brag about his money and usually invited his scummy friends to drinks, food, even rides everywhere they wanted to go. One day, they told my brother that the car of a friend of theirs had broken down and asked him for help. When they go to his location, a guy comes out of nowhere and shoots my brother 3 times in the back. Almost agonizing. They put him in his car and his friends and the shooter start driving who knows where. I would guess to end him and dispose the body. The capital in my country is really small, so to get anywhere you have to cross a monument that connects highways to go any place far away. To specify, my brother was in the back with one of his friends. The other friend was driving and the shooter was in the passenger seat. When they got to the monument, don't ask me how. Not even my brother understands, with 3 shoots in his body and bleeding to death. But he saw a small distraction from the guy next to him, and the nervousness of the guys in the front that were going through the most trafficked area possible. He hit the guy with his head, opened the door and rolled out of the car. He started crawling on the street to get to a sidewalk and started yelling for help. The guys in the car obviously escaped. Given the area, they didn't stop nor shot him, cause it would have caused a huge scandal. In the end, ambulance got there. My brother survived because none of the bullets touched anything vital. Eventually, they caught the 3 guys, but a lot of the other friends that were involved were not charged due to lack of evidence. Edit. Just punctuation. Maybe not a murder attempt, but it could have ended in murder. My dad forced me to work from him from when I was 13-20, selling drugs for him. At 20, he wanted me to do a suicide run, driving from Southern California to Northern Maine, with 100 pounds of weed. That was the first time I ever said no to him. I got kicked out and all my shit was left on the side of the road. I was disowned from my family and considered an enemy at that point. Anyways, I moved to Western MA and started slinging heavy again. This time on my own. I kept this up for a while and expanded. I had also been helping some people I knew with their own operations. It was mostly networking stuff. Connecting different people I knew that needed different things. Helping optimize production, distribution, profitability. I had a pretty decent criminal resume with no charges, so I had a lot of people coming to me for help. I was essentially a manager for people who were too dumb to be their own criminal. Time passed and I tried to change my ways because I wanted a normal life and to be able to not worry so much. I ghosted everyone that I had been working with. A lot of people went out of business or lost a lot of their profits when I left, so naturally they were mad at me. I don't care if it is a jealousy thing or what, but a lot of times, people who are like this don't want you to change your ways and it's seen as a disrespect to everyone else. My dad put a bag, 4 pounds weed, on my head. There was this kid I had worked with and before and was close with. He called me up saying he has some guy who needs to buy bulk oil, a few lbs. I had the ability to produce and distribute it, but I didn't have a good location for the oil manufacturing. He told me that we could use his place, but he was short on cash and needed some money for buying flour and lab equipment. I trusted him. We had known each other for years and done a lot of work together in the past. I showed up with 21k cash and he was waiting with 4 friends with guns. They robbed me at gunpoint and said that anyone else but them would have killed me. They collected on half the bag for robbing me and scaring the shit out me. Also last month my dad called me again threatening to come down to MA and kill me or have me killed. I don't think he's had anyone killed yet, but I know he's had people beaten up, robbed, and one time he had a guy get hacked up with a machete. Somehow didn't die. I'm pretty terrified tbh because I know he will go through with what he says. I'm kind of hoping that I can just slide off the radar at this point and dispensary and change my name. Another short story is when I was in high school. My sister's ex-boyfriend thought that I was the reason she broke up with him and he was pissed. He came at me trying to stab me with a huge over-exaggerated knife with like an 11-inch blade. I took off running while one of his boys held him back. This kid ended up getting brain damage after getting into a fight with another kid, who was trying to go semi-pro in boxing. So I guess he isn't much of a danger to anyone anymore. A friend of my dad had a radio in the 80s. He had connections in the Spanish government and talked about all the shit that happened inside. They shot at him. He survived. They ran over him. He survived. In the end they paid him to keep quiet. He can't walk without help though. The car hit him pretty bad. Not sure if this one counts, but I was born in Iraq at the very start of the war. My parents tried shielding us from the war and death outside, but sometimes things just happened the likes of which they had no control over. I was about 5 years old. I can't remember my exact age, but all I can remember is that I was too young to attend elementary school. My mom was getting my siblings ready for school, brushing my sister's hair, and I was sitting on her tailoring bench with a curtain-less window behind me. I remember playing around with some pins she had laying around. My grandma, alive at the time, was watching over me so I do not fall. Thus, when a pin dropped from my hand to the floor, she was quick to tell me to pick it up so no one would step on it. I bent down to pick up the pin and I hear a pop, similar to the popping sound of a balloon. I glanced back and the window was gone, and all I hear next is my sister scream and start crying. My mom quickly yelled for all of us to get against the wall and to get away from the window. As we all look around the room to see what happened, we see a bullet, as long as an index finger, in the middle of the room. One of my brothers goes over to pick it up, but it was too hot to touch. The next day we go over to the police and all they can do is tell us that it was a sniper bullet and they can't do anything about it. I assume that a sniper saw me just sitting there in front of a window and took the shot, but it missed me when I bent down to pick up the pin, so it went over my head, grazing my sister's arm before stopping on the floor. This girl who thought knew me messaged me on Instagram. Even though we never met, we continued talking. Turns out she had a boyfriend who went to my school and he threatened to kill me if I didn't block her. He actually brought a knife to school that day too. Nothing happened to me, while the kid with a knife was expelled after a teacher saw the knife in his backpack.